today, and I'm back for another episode of Book Talk, where we talk all things books. Today, the book we're talking about is All the Way to the River by Elizabeth Gilbert. I'm going to give my review a little bit early. I haven't finished the book, but that's how good it is. So let's talk about it. So, Elizabeth Gilbert, All the Way to the River. Guys, I'm not going to even hold you. This book has brought me to tears a few times, and I'm only on page 63. So I knew that I had to come talk to you about this book because I don't want you to miss it. I don't want you not to get this book, and you need it. So let's go over some of the things that really brought me in. So quick plot overview. All the Way to the River. Elizabeth Gilbert is back. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love. She probably done some things in between, but I don't know. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And she's back a couple years later. She's a lesbian now. She got married to a woman named Raya. Raya gets diagnosed with cancer. She relapses back into drug addiction. And Elizabeth is there all the way to the end of her life. And it was a hell of a journey. So let's get into some of the big things that happened in this book, okay? So All the Way to the River. She wakes up on her 54th birthday and she says she feels this energy around her. Her late wife, energy is in the room, and she's telling her it's time to, write the book. And so I'm like, okay. Now you guys know me. I don't read a lot of memoirs, and I did accidentally pick this up in the airport. I just wanted a new book. I like the cover. I was like, let's go. I didn't know it was like a nonfiction, and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna love it. And I don't know if this book is for me because I don't find people's personal lives that interesting. People don't interest me that much, right? But then on page 9, I was like, let me change my mind. This is why. She said, this book is not only for people whose lives have been negatively impacted by their own addictions or by the addictions of others, although I do believe these two categories will include pretty much all of us at some point or another. This book is also about the many ways that people, despite their best effort at living sane and stable lives, can sometimes get swept into high-octane dramas and traumas, finding themselves washed up on shores that can feel very distant from their true natures. This line on page 9 made me change my whole perspective about whether or not I wanted to read a nonfiction literary work. Why? Because no, I don't have a drug addiction. But like she said, maybe your addiction isn't the ones, the big 5. Maybe you're not a gambler or an alcoholic or a sexaholic or a drug user. Maybe that's not you. But that doesn't mean that you don't have something in your life that you feel little to no power over, and it can be causing chaos or traumas on you, or putting you in situations that you never thought you would be in. So in that way, I was like, you know what? Let me keep reading. It really, that paragraph right there on page 9 made me think differently. And then when she said, what we commonly call an addict, I believe is just an exaggerated version of all of us. Just a person so desperately in search of relief from the sting of life that they will use anything or anyone to soothe it. Right there. I was like, this book is for me. This book is for everybody. And I can't say I know a person on this earth who hasn't felt that. So that's how I knew I should keep reading. I should see where she was going with things. Because 1, clocked my tea, clocked it heavy, clocked it for real. And 2, is she wrong? Is she wrong? So the next chapter, she tells us who Raya was. She's charismatic, she's fun, she's energetic, she's a barber, people love her. She can woo a jury and she's just a great person. But she says Raya, whose pain from cancer and fear of death ultimately drove her into the arms of alcohol, cigarettes, sugar, weed, Xanax, Vicodin, Ambien, codeine, morphine, trazodone, fentanyl, cocaine, I sound like Whitney Houston. But and then she also says, I still sometimes have trouble saying her name and breathing at the same time. So she talks about all the things Raya dealt with, and she also talks about how she loved her the most, and it's hard to even say her name some days because that's how much her heart got broken. How hurt she is. But she sets us in. And then by chapter 3, she's telling us what All the Way to the River means. If you don't want a spoiler, close it now, dip away. I'm going to explain the title of this book, All the Way to the River. What does it mean? It is a metaphor about friendship, and it's so rich. So Raya comes up with this idea, actually, not Elizabeth. Raya says her friendships are like an operative metaphor for the map of New York City. She says on Fifth Avenue, you have your completely artificial friends. These are your social friends, your professional friends, your acquaintances. They don't know much about you. You keep it cute. Then you get to 4th and 3rd Avenue. You're polite with these people, but they know you a little more. You can joke. You're a little loose. You're a little more intimate. You might have met a mom or two. When you get to your 1st Avenue friends, these people know you. They know you, and you know them. You guys have history. You could have been neighbors. Maybe you've traveled. Maybe you started a business. You've witnessed each other's success and failures. You're honest. You're vulnerable. These people are people you can trust. They got your back. They're going to be there. She said, but it isn't really until you get to your alphabet friends. It's just that your Avenue A, B, C, and D friends, they've been through shit with you, and they will manage to love you. Boundaries have been crossed. You've had to forgive each other. These are the realest friends you will ever have in life. Okay, all right. Then finally, if you're really lucky, you'll have one friend over the course of your whole entire life who will walk all the way to East River with you. So that was the idea. Who would walk with you all the way to the East River? They're your last phone call in the middle of the night from the void when you have no else to turn. And, you know, that's what she said. And she said, Rise to tell her, you're my all the way to the river friend. How beautiful is that? She says, I can't get into the river with you, I said, but I'll walk you right to the edge of it. I'll be there with you every step of the way. This chapter so far is my favorite chapter, and I'm going to tell you why. So this year, I've been very absent from YouTube. I'm sure a lot of you guys noticed it. Thank you. I actually got very sick, and I found myself in a hospital for days. And as you know, I don't live in my hometown, so I don't have any family here. That said, I had to get 3 blood transfusions, 2 iron transfusions, and I was considered a miracle. They put me in a cancer unit. They really thought I was on my way to death. I had something terribly wrong with me. I'm fine, I'm recovering now. But I'm telling you that to say, that was a time where I had to consider who would go all the way to the river with me. And I'm someone who's felt deeply alone my whole life. I've always felt deeply alone. So this was interesting because people showed up, and it's not always going to be people you think that are going to show up, but man, that's the people that you need. And I was so grateful for the people who showed up. And I find that I have a little resentment for the people who didn't come to me at the river when I needed them. And it's something I'm working through. But yeah, that did mean a lot to me. It made me cry because going to the river is scary. It's scary. Raya was dying, and she said she walked her to the river, and it was scary. And she says, honestly, you can't even tell where this body of water ends at the beginning or begins at the end. But yes, back to our story. I promised my beloved friend I would walk with her all the way to the river, and God help us, that is exactly what I did. Right there, I knew I was going to love Elizabeth. I don't know damn what she does. She's all right with me, because what a beautiful commitment to make to someone, to decide that I'm going to be there with you, and I'm going to make sure that you never have to feel alone in death. I'm going to make sure that I'll hold your hand from here to the river, to death, and you can count on me. I think that's such a beautiful commitment to make to somebody. And I loved that Elizabeth was willing to do that for Raya in that time. It touched me so deep. And I had to keep reading. I just had to. And so after that, Elizabeth finally gets to her own story. A very interesting, she says, she actually not even there. She takes a long time to get to her own story. She talks about how she fell in love with Raya, how Raya was so interesting, all these things. And then she finally, about chapter 4, she says she has to remember, like, this is my story. And she talks about that's one of her big challenges. She suffers from sex and love addiction, and it's easy for her to get lost in other people, so she doesn't have to deal with her shit. And she says, I belong here. And those are her words. These are words saved my life day after day. I belong here means that I belong here on this planet, or have seldom felt safe or normal. It means that I belong here in this body, which I have rarely inhabited and which I have freely given away countless times, along with my heart, my time, my spirit, my home, and my money, to many other people to use for their own purposes. It means that I belong to whatever divine force went through all the trouble to create me, and that my belonging is not dependent upon my getting it right, whatever that even means. Give me a second, guys. Okay, so back to Elizabeth. She struggles to love herself as much as she loves the people around her. So she has to tell herself, I belong here also means that I belong in my own story, even if it sometimes takes me a few chapters to get back to remembering that. So why is she like this? She says she has a desperation to be loved and certainly outside, and has caused me to act out in ways that are undeniably insane. I like this particular paragraph. I'm going to read it because I think other people could think about themselves and agree with Elizabeth in some aspects. Maybe not in a grandiose scale as Elizabeth, but you can see her. I can see her. I can understand her. I can match what her energy is. But she says, I suspect that parts of my story may feel familiar to many of my readers, especially my female readers, who, like me, may have been socialized since birth to believe that they did not possess much inherent value, but were estimable only insofar as they are capable of making themselves attractive enough to be chosen. Failing to succeed in this massively important project of proving yourself worthy of being chosen meant that you were a failure and that nothing else you have manifested would have much significance in anyone's eyes. Now, I'm a 35-year-old woman. I have not been married. I have not even been engaged. Yes, I have definitely had different times in my life where I feel that there was societal pressure for me to be a lot more traditional. Now, as I've gotten older, my family has realized that I'm a little bit different and that things are going to be different for me, and they give me so much grace. But, I think that that feeling she talks about is very real. And she also says she kind of goes through ups and downs with it. So she's desperate for that reason, and she talks about how romantic breakups and divorces are among the primary causes of suicide, homicide, addiction, relapse, and science has now proven that people can literally die of a broken heart. The small arteries feeding the heart become physically crushed by the experience of acute grief, and this can lead to a heart attack or death. This condition is 5 times more likely to be seen in women than in men. Okay, so we see that. She's a love addict. She also says she has process addiction. As opposed to substance addiction, process addictions are characterized by extreme compulsivity around certain behaviors: gambling, shopping, hoarding, eating, sex, control, obsession, gaming, skin picking, etc. She's addicted to people. Elizabeth says she's addicted to people. She says, but when it comes down to all of it, any addiction, it's grounded in the need to feel loved, and whatever we use, put in that hole where we feel like we're not loved, is a way we use addiction. So the hole is there. Maybe you fill it with different things: drugs, alcohol, food, money, sex, cigarettes, gambling, gaming, success, perfectionism, workaholicism, internet addiction, you named it. I had circled perfectionism because I think that's where I struggle the most. And I'm finding that the most as I struggle to get healthy, because I'm learning how dependent I am on certain things about my body, my looks, and that I attribute to my inherent wealth. And it's a problem. And I would have never tackled this problem if I had not gotten so sick. And now that that problem has manifested, I can do the work on myself. But by God, it's really hard to do. So I did circle that. Now, when we don't have love met early in life, it can warp our brains into dangerous and even insane decision making for the rest of our life. So she's talking about how she's disordered and she's disoriented. But she also talks about how she's kept secret, she's lived a double life. She's always hidden, a stash of supply to keep herself from going crazy. And so she says, I want to be very honest about who I am too, because I don't blame anybody for my problems. It's because I don't think it's particularly useful to hold others responsible for my fate or for my behaviors. So she wants people to know, she's made mistakes, she's hurt people, and people have hurt her, but she knows she's responsible for that, and that she wants to move on. So then she says, what you had when Raya and Lista came together was a pair of untreated addicts on a slow collision course. It is not surprising that everything went sideways and that people got hurt. Yet, despite it all, I still insist upon believing that we were both innocent, absolutely innocent. My view of humanity is that all of us are innocent and none of us are. Because nobody wakes up every morning and says, how can I be the most fucked up possible version of myself? How can I cause the greatest amount of harm to myself and others? Perhaps even creating patterns of dysfunction that will impact multitudes of people for generations to come. The only thing anyone is ever trying to do is survive their minds, their histories, their dilemmas, their destinies, their days. And everyone struggles, and everyone flounders, and everyone deploys their very best coping strategies to relieve themselves of suffering, and we're all doing the best we can. And most of all, God only knows, everyone belongs here. So already we're on page 50. This is how good the book is. I was like eating this. I was hungry. I didn't know I was hungry for a memoir. I didn't know I needed a nonfiction. But this book has helped me to feel deeply understood and seen. And it's like I don't even have addiction issues in the same way as them, but I can identify with the pain that is at the bottom and at the root of her addiction. And I honestly think that I'm just got lucky. Like, I don't think there's anything about me that makes me incapable of being addicted to something. I don't. I don't think anyone is. It's just the luck of the draw. And I think that, I struggle with things. Just like she's saying she struggled with things, I can relate to her struggles, just not her coping mechanism. That's the only difference. So even if you're not a big drug user, you're not an alcoholic or any of these things, it doesn't mean you can't meet Elizabeth in this book. I'm meeting her in this book and I'm saying, girl, I understand you, I see you, and I want to hold your hand and I want you to hold mine because that's so beautiful. Anyway, this is my second time doing this book because of course I messed up the first video. I love the book. I want you guys to read it with me, so go get a copy. I'm on page 63, so catch up, and we're going to get down to the nitty gritty. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm going to see you I'm going to see you soon. Thanks for talking. Talk to you later.